Good morning, everyone. Eric Hörst here. The Training Cafe is opening up for business. So let me click a few buttons here. Try to live if we can on Instagram, as well as here on YouTube and on Facebook. And I'm happy to have you joining me here today. Thank you. I know oftentimes these training cafes, we have viewers from many countries around the world. So we'll see you on this Monday who decides to join us. And hopefully my signal here, I'm not at home in my normal location. And so the Wi-Fi is a bit funky perhaps for this live stream, but hopefully we can get through this for the next 20, 30, 40 minutes, however long it lasts. I have a topic for the day as usual. And today's topic, as perhaps you saw in the promotion, is 6 tips to climb stronger today. Not next year, but today. And I think these are very valuable tips if you're heading into your performance climbing season. You know, the autumn season, I'm, hoping to do a fair amount of climbing here the next few weeks. And, doing things in the short term that can make a difference is a powerful intervention because the training is kind of in our past at this point, when you get to performance climbing season. And then I'll be answering some of your training questions. So if you have something on your mind, an injury, or maybe a question about outdoor climbing performance, sport climbing, nutrition, recovery, you name it. I have been coaching for 40 years, so I have most of the answers, but I will admit not all of them. I'm still, as I'm fond of saying, I'm still both a student and teacher of climbing performance. And so, yeah, I've been coaching a long time, but I'm a lifelong learner. And there's just so much to learn and improve on in this great sport of climbing that, I'm happy to, of course, share that wealth of knowledge with you. Now, before we get started with the topic of the day and then your questions after that, let's raise our cups. If you have coffee or another beverage, this is where we sip in unison. Climbers around the world unite. It's in the spirit of climbing that I do these shows, sharing my love and passion as a lifelong climber. And hopefully there's other lifelong climbers out there and also some newbies who are going to become lifelong climbers. That's what I love about this sport, is bringing people together. This past weekend was the Red River Gorge Rocktoberfest, which I came down here to participate in with my business, Physivantage Nutrition. And it's a wonderful event with many hundreds of climbers, mostly from the United States, but there were a handful of folks that I ran into from other countries, Australia, certainly a lot of Canadians here, and a handful of Europeans, and a couple of pro climbers as well. So it was a good time, good event, to really get a sense of the community and the growing climbing community and the growing number of crags and routes that are opening up here. I mean, I think at this point, the Red River Gorge is the biggest sport climbing area and destination in the United States, and one of the biggest in the world as well. Many thousands of great sport routes here at the Red, and on any given day, hundreds and hundreds of sport climbers, spreading them out, of course, hopefully, so we don't overcrowd any given crag. But there's lots of new crags coming online here at the Red. And so if you've not been here in the last few years, there's a lot of new stuff to come check out. But enough with that. Let's get on to the topic of the day, which is the fastest way, or let's say 6, tips or techniques, and there's certainly many more I could come up with if I put on my thinking cap, but things you can do right now to climb better today on your project, or this week on your trip, or this coming weekend when you get back out on the rocks or on the boulders. And first of all, I guess in summary, the fastest way to climb stronger today is by plugging energy leaks. Again, the training's in the past. You can't cram training. There's nothing you can train today that's going to make you a stronger climber tomorrow or even next week. But plugging energy leaks where you waste your energy, that is powerful and can make a dramatic difference in the short term. Think of it like driving your car with underinflated tires, a sputtering engine, a heavy foot. They're all wasting fuel. They're wasting power. Well, the same thing happens when we're climbing. Your power to perform it can leak away through inefficient movements, poor tactics, poor strategy, and emotions that run wild, waste tons of energy. So here's the brutal truth, dear listener. You're probably strong enough right now to climb the next grade, but it's those energy leaks that are holding you back and wasting that precious power that you've trained and developed. So you need to ultimately learn to use more of your existing strength and power efficiently to get you up the route, as opposed to letting it drain away and have you come up short a few bolts from the top, or not being able to complete the boulder problem. So you want to clean up the most common energy leaks. Now, everybody's different, but there's a lot of commonalities that I've observed and I've experienced myself. And that's what I'm going to run through and give you some tips here of things to think about and that maybe you can work on going forward. So again, the 6 tips together can make a huge difference. And even if you clean up 1 or 2 of these, it can make a significant difference in your climbing in the short term. Okay, so tip number 1, in terms of cleaning up energy leaks and saving more of your power to use to move up the route. And that first tip is to simply climb faster. When the holds get small and the moves feel desperate, most climbers instinctively slow down when ultimately you want to speed up. Hard sequences, think of it as needing to step on the gas to get up that hill. That is really where you want to go, as opposed to slowing down and thinking about how difficult the moves are or how small and painful the holds are. Moving faster, committing fully, keeping a sense of momentum through the hardest part of the climb, that will save you energy. And you can practice this in the climbing gym in a very safe setting. Learn to climb more confidently and briskly without getting sloppy, because if you get sloppy, then you're, of course, wasting energy as well. Once you learn to do this in the gym and you instinctively become a little faster climber, you can employ it outdoors, again, in safe settings. Only a fool would climb quickly and decisively through dangerous terrain that needs a more nuanced and safety managed approach. Tip number 2 for plugging energy leaks and climbing stronger today is to clean up your footwork. Noisy, shaky, skidding feet, it's a huge energy drain. What you want to do is focus your eyes less on looking for handholds and more on placing your feet properly. Focus on the foothold, like the bullseye of the target on that foothold. Place your foot precisely on that bullseye spot of the foothold. Feel your foot stick as you apply pressure, and then transfer your weight and your hips, center of gravity, towards that foot placement as the hold dictates. And this will save you a lot of energy, because clean, quiet footwork saves grip strength. It improves your balance, and it builds a real sense of confidence when you can feel your feet under you, helping push you up the route. Tip number 3 for plugging energy leaks and climbing stronger today is to get new, tighter fitting, appropriately fit climbing shoes that can match the route at hand. Now a slab or a gym route, a crack or a steep sport route might require a little different shoe to give you that best fit and feel. But I will tell you that if you're wearing old, sloppy shoes, it wastes a ton of power and it forces you to definitely overgrip with your fingers and often tighten down through your shoulders and torso already, which means a rapid energy burn of precious upper power, strength, and endurance. So the fix, it's pretty simple. Just get newer shoes more often. It's a very important investment to make, and make sure they're sensitive enough to feel the holds, but also that you have the right shoe for the job. Because again, if you're heading to climb a hand crack, the optimal shoe is a little different than if you're heading to climb a steep, overhanging, pocketed route, or say, route here at the Red River Gorge. You would not use that same crack climbing shoe. Okay, on to tip number 4, and that is to clip bolts from the optimal position, not from like the soonest you can clip them. And this is a common mistake I see with newer lead climbers, where in the gym they're used to that bolt every 3 feet, and you get outdoors and it's maybe every 6 or 10 feet between bolts, and the temptation is to constantly be stretching to clip bolts high over your head because you're a little fearful of the potential fall you could take. But if a outdoor sport climb is or has been well bolted and thoughtfully bolted, as I try to do when I put up sport routes outdoors, there should be a logical clipping hold and standing position or balance point. You shouldn't be clipping in the middle of a crux. If you feel like you're doing that on the route, either it's a botched sport route in terms of bad bolt placements, or you're just climbing or trying to clip too early. Oftentimes it means just, from where you could maybe try to make the clip, go a few moves higher. There should be a better hold and hopefully a better stance as well, where you can not only clip the bolt near your waist or chest, but also after clipping, be able to shake out, recover, take a few deep breaths, and formulate your game plan for getting through the next section and up to the next bolt. On to tip number 5, and that is to gain control over your emotions. Now, this is a lifelong journey for many climbers because climbing can be stressful and scary, and naturally our emotions can get out of control and run wild, and that is when our body really tightens down and we begin to accelerate the drain of energy. And so the leak, instead of being a drip, 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 is a gush of power and strength out of your body. And, again, fear, anxiety, frustration, they all tighten down and kill efficiency. But the best climbers learn to stay calm under pressure. And at the Paramount, you have someone like Alex Honnold who can stay calm 2,000 feet off the ground, free soloing on El Cap. And that is, of course, a skill that is developed over decades. But it's one day at a time, 1 year at a time for all of us as climbers. And I encourage climbers to be more intentional and deliberate with their self-awareness and the actions they take to control their arousal and to control their fears and to counter unfounded fears, those phantom fears that freak you out, but they're not legitimate, which in different climbing situations, they can pop up out of nowhere. And you have to just with reason and experience, learn to counter those feelings or fears. And of course, as frequently as possible, pausing as you go up the route at good stances, good shakeouts, to take a few deep breaths and to get centered and refocus and just generally reset. I try to do that at every bolt or every rest position when I'm on a sport route, so that I kind of not only recover physically a little bit, but get my heart rate down and just kind of lower the temperature a little bit on what you're feeling when you're on that hard climb. So again, this is a skill that is developed over months and years. It's not easily won, but trust me, dear viewer, that if you are engaged in the process of mental training, just as most climbers are physically training, you will make big improvements in the mental game. And sometimes those gains mentally, and also along with it, the technical, tactical gains that can come about, can be more profound and more impactful than the gains you make through strength training, which can come very slowly for well-trained, experienced climbers. Okay, on to the 6th and final tip for climbing stronger beginning today, and that is to fuel smart to climb stronger. Because ultimately, having your muscles function properly demands a good, well-rounded diet that provides all the nutrients you need, not just protein, the building blocks for strengthening muscles and recovering muscles after workouts and climbing, but also critical micronutrients, the vitamins that, allow our enzymes and everything, nerve function, muscle function to work optimally in our body. We have this finite reserve of ATP and CP and glycogen in our muscles. Of course, we want to try to be as aerobic powered where we're burning fat as possible, but on the hardest moves, the most powerful moves, we draw on those finite substrates in the muscle cells that can only, at times, if you're really climbing hard and at your limit, last fleeting seconds or minutes at most. And so again, it comes back to conserving energy, but then when you have to expend it, expending it wisely and efficiently. So check your diet. Make sure you're fueling properly, not only on the climbing day, but on your recovery days, so that you return to the crags after a rest day fully refueled. And then the final thing to consider is a performance boosting supplement. Now, caffeine is probably the most popular performance boosting supplement in the gym and maybe in bouldering. But on sport climbing, caffeine can backfire if you get too much of it, because you get shaky, you get jittery, you get heart palpitations, and all of those things can actually make you feel more uneasy and overgrip and tighten you down and waste energy. So for route climbing in particular, but also in the gym, something like the PhysiVantage Sendurex, which is a all-natural supplement with citrulline malate and beetroot extract that actually enhances endurance profoundly by way of its ability to vasodilate capillaries. The capillaries, the very smallest vessels that supply blood to your working muscles, they're most of the time like a one-lane highway. But with something like Sendurex, the vasodilation turns them into two-lane highways, which means more blood flow into those working climbing muscles like your finger flexors. And more blood flow means more oxygen, more endurance, more stamina, and faster recovery when you get to those rest positions. So blood flow is a good thing. And when you pump out, that's kind of like a traffic jam of blood flow. So by opening up those capillaries before you climb with a product like Sendurex, you can actually reduce the pump a little bit. You'll still get pumped, but not as pumped, and you'll endure longer. So there's a little performance nutrition tip to help you climb your best, as soon as possible, beginning today, or I'm resting today, but hopefully tomorrow. So the bottom line is fixing these energy leaks is ultimately the fastest path to better performance. Training gains take time. They come over the long term of months and years. But little things like I just outlined in this video can come almost instantly if you can learn to implement them, perfect them, and have the wherewithal to become a new climber. Let go of some of your bad habits of the past and become more skilled technically, mentally, and physically on the rock. It's about really increasing your climbing IQ, which is something that we should all be trying to do year over year. Okay, so I guess that pretty much covers it for the topic of the day. I talked a bit longer maybe than I wanted to. Let me see if I can see if there have been any questions or comments typed in. If you have a training question or other type of question, this would be the time to type it into the comments box, and I will be happy to answer them. And yeah, I see one comment here from Ethan. Yes, he says sometimes it's actually easier to clip after the hard moves. And that's a very good point, especially on hard climbs, steep climbs. Maybe there'll be a bolt in the middle of the crux that's kind of a working bolt that you clip, when you're grabbing draws and working the route. But on red point, you just can't stop, or you don't want to stop in the middle of the crux. And so you might be several moves by and then pull down and clip the rope down at your knee. Or in some situations, maybe you skip the bolt completely and climb past it to the next bolt, which is actually not an uncommon technique among elite level climbers. You see them on their cutting edge 515s, and they may skip a bolt or sometimes two to span a gap of hard climbing where it would just be too inefficient and wasteful to try to clip the bolt. So Ethan, that's a great comment and point that you made there. Don't hesitate to give the coach here some other comments or ideas that you have that you want to contribute. Okay, another question here from Andre says he sprained his ankle on a dynamic slap move back in March. So that's what, more than 6 months ago. He says, I just came up a bit short, slipped, my heel dropped too far. I ended up crushing it. How can I get my confidence back? Yeah, I hear this question sadly quite frequently. People, whether it's a sport climbing fall injury or even a bad bouldering fall where you can break an ankle or blow out a knee, the physical recovery is only sometimes half the process, and that you have to mentally come back. And to some degree, when you have, dare I say, PTSD, and I don't want to compare a climbing injury, though they can be severe. I don't want to compare it to like what our military experiences. People have other horrible life tragedies that have a serious mental issue, PTSD. But in some ways, climbing injuries do have that effect on folks. And, you might physically recover from that ankle injury, but then it takes you time to kind of get your head back. And to some degree, Andre, the simple answer, though it's probably not what you want to hear, is it takes time. It might take a season or two, to kind of just get it back and feel the confidence to push yourself again. That being said, I think you can also force yourself a little bit by picking certain boulders or routes, whatever your passion is, and lowering your guard enough to push yourself to the point of falling or risking falling. But again, by picking the right boulder or route, putting yourself in safe situations, where you have good pads under you bouldering or good spotter you can trust. Or in the case of route climbing, a route that doesn't present any obstacles that you could fall into, a steeper airfall kind of route, again, with a good belayer, where like you can use logic and reason to say, there's no way I'm hurting my ankle again or hurting anything on this boulder or route, because I've selected and I've risk managed the situation. And so I think those are the two strategies. Intentionally push yourself in safe situations where you can, go through the process of learning to trust yourself again, but then also at the same time giving yourself time, not rushing the return to being a more bold, really aggressive climber, which, is needed to push your limit. That old try hard, and really throwing yourself at a route and giving it your all. That is essential sometimes to send at your limit. And that sometimes means letting go, which is hard to do post-injury. So hopefully that gives you some advice there. Yeah, he's just a follow-up from Andre saying it's not really an issue, but it's for the first time in his life a struggle to commit. So prior to the injury, he kind of instinctively was a climber who could commit, but now post-injury, understandably, things are a little different given this situation. Any other viewer comments? Feel free to type them in here. Questions. If you're new to the Training Cafe, this is something I try to do once or twice per month, depending on my busy work schedule. It is sometimes less than that. I think it's been maybe 5 weeks right now since my last Training Cafe. If you missed it, it was a really good one. I kind of broke down the movie Girl Climber about Emily Harrington and discussed some of the powerful lessons for working big projects and committing to and hopefully reaching audacious goals despite adversity and setbacks that might make the average person give up. which of course Emily did not. She ended up sending the free climb on El Cap, the first female ascent of Golden Gate in a day was what the achievement was. And it's a wonderful movie with some great lessons to take and apply to our own climbing. And that's kind of what I broke down in the last episode of the Training Cafe. So do consider checking that out. Another question just came in. Do you have an opinion on using a weight vest for indoor training? Yeah, it's a technique that I've used for probably 25 or 30 years in certain situations. Let me tell you what those certain situations are. And, I have been, as a coach, a proponent of this. I think, my Training for Climbing book, it's on its third or fourth edition, but you go back to even the second edition in the 90s, and I talked a bit about the value of not only things like weighted pull-ups, which you don't need a vest to do that. You can clip weights onto your harness to do that. But perhaps what you're referring to more specifically is wearing extra weight while, say, bouldering. I'm not a big fan of adding weight to your body for route climbing, but because of the falling and such. But in bouldering, where you can easily step off a wall, whether it's a kilter board or a home wall or even a spray wall, to put on a little extra weight. And I don't think you should go excessive. I've seen videos of people putting 50 or 60-pound vests on. That messes up your climbing technique. You can't move right. You can't set your hips right. That's just not appropriate. I tell people begin with a little 5-pound weight belt, or if you have one of these vests where the weight is spread around your torso, you don't want it to interfere with your movement. And if it gets too heavy, it does. But if you do have the weight, like I like a weight belt because it puts the weight near the center of gravity. The weight vest, it's a little too high, unless it's really spread around. If you have one of these more sophisticated weight vests that takes 5 pounds and spreads it all over your torso, then it almost feels like part of your body. And so it wouldn't hinder your performance. But in any case, I think there is good value there because, when you're climbing on a bouldering wall, for most moves, you have some of your body weight on your feet. So you're never stressing your fingers as fully as you would like if you were dangling on a hangboard. And now, of course, hangboarding is its own, training modality and has its own protocols that are optimal to use. But for getting onto a tread wall or a home wall, as I have, and doing some 30-30 intervals or doing some limit bouldering with the weight on, one of the nice things is, like, if you're limit bouldering at body weight, sometimes you have to go really small with the fingers and your skin wear becomes an issue. And of course, if you're doing a lot of small crimping, pulley wear becomes an issue. And so by putting on, say, a 10-pound weight belt and getting on the wall, you can get the same workout, but using bigger holds. Instead of 10-millimeter crimps, maybe you're grabbing 20 or 24-millimeter crimps. And so there's less skin wear. You can probably maybe half crimp more than full crimp or closed crimp. And you can get the same training stimulus, but with a little less wear and tear on the skin and the connective tissues. It's not a go-to thing I do every session, but it's something I do as part of my program. I work it in and out, mainly during a training block is when I would do some weighted climbing. And of course, I'm a big fan of weighted hangboard, weighted pull-ups, and of course, even lifts with some pretty heavy weight. But that's kind of separate from the whole idea of putting weight on to actually climb on the wall. And so hopefully that gives you some ideas, something to experiment with, but not go overboard on. That is for sure. Okay. Nicholas Hess has a question. Any good 512C, 512D routes you'd recommend at the Red? Oh my goodness, hundreds. There's a lot. If you go to the Undertow wall, Resurrection's a great 12C. It's a nice shaded wall. It only catches a little bit of sun late in the day. If it's cold here and you go to Muir Valley at the Sanctuary, maybe the best 12D at the Red is called Jesus Wept. fantastic route. Just wonderful from bottom to top. Right next to it is a route called Triple Sec, which is 12C, which is a little more bouldery, less endury, but it's an excellent route in its own right. If you want kind of an entry level 12C at the gallery, there's Mosaic, which is a lot of people's first 12C they send because it's a short crux, just a little like 3-move boulder problem towards the top of the route, and the rest is maybe just 511 climbing. So that's a really good one. There's many more. There's a slew at Miller Fork. There's quite a few at Muir Valley. Chocolate Factory, Gene Wilder, fantastic 12D. It was originally called 13A, but it got whittled down to 12D, which I guess I agree, but probably quite technical and maybe hard for 12D. But that is indeed a classic. And boy, oh boy, the list goes on and on. Left side of the Motherlode at Buckeye Buttress, there's Stain, which is 12C, Buff the Wood, which is 12AB. There's Heart-Shaped Box, which I think is 12D. They're on a sunny morning wall, so if you're ever there on a frosty, cold morning, that's a great wall to go to and get on a few 12s. So hopefully that helps you out. Okay, on we go to another question. What about using creatine for a period of the year for improving physical condition, also for sustaining a particular state of tiredness due to job and stress factors? Thanks a lot. Creatine, it's a pretty amazing supplement. It's very well studied, arguably the most studied of all supplements that are on the market. I first used creatine in the early 1990s. When it first came out, I was curious because I saw the initial research about how its ability to help with short-term bursts of power, like doing individual hard moves or a few hard moves in a row, seemed to have a real application, especially to training and to bouldering when you're trying to work at a limit. And over the decades, the research has expanded, and we now know the cognitive benefits, not only for older people like me, but benefits for people, if you have CTE or you have a concussion or any type of head injury. Creatine is actually a first mode of intervention to take 20 grams a day because the creatine is brain fuel. Just like it's muscle fuel. And so it has been shown to help people in stressful situations. I think your working memory's a little better when you're fatigued. Maybe it has some effects similar to caffeine without the stimulating. Creatine's not a stimulant. It's a energy substrate. But for some folks, it might have an effect kind of similar to caffeine in terms of sharpening your focus a little bit. I'm mainly a route climber, so I just microdose creatine because a couple of the unintended consequences of consuming creatine is that in most people, it does draw water. I mean, it is stored inside the muscle cells and it pulls water in. So it actually makes the muscle cells swell a little bit. All of your muscle cells, particularly fast twitch. It stores preferentially in fast twitch. So athletes who are very fast twitch or genetically fast twitch people that have larger muscles just genetically will store more creatine and more water, and it'll bulk them up. So bodybuilders love it. Football players love it. People where your mass is part of your power, like in football, and certainly some other sports as well. The creatine loading and the volumization effect, bodybuilders in particular, is a good thing because it just makes everything bigger and look bigger. But, climbers don't necessarily want to be bigger. We want to be stronger without getting bigger. We're in a strength to weight ratio sport, as are bicyclers and runners and jumpers. You want to get stronger and more powerful without putting on weight if possible. And so that makes creatine loading questionable for those types of sports. And if you only do a few grams a day, you're not going to store so much water and maybe only realize a pound or two gain. So you get some of the benefits without some of the downsides. Other people, if you creatine load, can put on 5-10 pounds of muscle, or a lot of it's water stored inside the muscle. And some people that abates over time, other people it does not. And there's actually a segment of people that are creatine non-responders. They take it, they don't notice anything in terms of positive effects or negative effects. And it's my belief those people are mostly slow twitch muscle fiber oriented, more pure endurance athletes that are slow twitch. If you don't have much fast twitch, well, then you don't store much creatine. It's something ultimately everybody has to experiment with and see what it brings to the game. You kind of mentioned using it for a period of the year, and that's not a bad idea. I know a few climbers, a few pros here. One in particular is Matt Foltz, who's one of our PhysiVantage nutrition athletes. He has told me that he will do 5 grams, maybe more a day of creatine during his winter training block, knowing he's going to put on some weight, but also be able to train harder and get more gains. And then as he goes into his performance season, he's mostly a boulderer that at times dabbles in sport routes, wanting to drop 5 pounds heading into performance season. He'll reduce his creatine to just a gram or two, or maybe none. And over about a 30-day period, your storage of the creatine phosphate will decline, as will the amount of water that you've stored into the cells will go down. And then you will be able to maintain your training gains from the training block, but you will have kind of lost the weight gain and the extra water that you're holding. And in theory, and I guess for Matt, in reality, that puts him into a better place to perform after that whole scenario is played out. So hopefully that helps you out, and it kind of sounds like what you were talking about there. Okay, well, we're almost 40 minutes into this training cafe. I guess it's time for me to wrap things up. I've got a busy day. Even though it's a rest day for me from climbing, I'm going to go for a run this afternoon. It's a beautiful day here in the Red River Gorge. I'm, still fully in work life. I'm not retired by any stretch. I not only train hard like a youngster, but I work hard like a youngster, as I have the last 40 years. And so I'm putting in 40, 50-hour weeks of work, and then getting some sunburns in every now and then, and trying to make the best of both worlds. And I appreciate you joining me for this training cafe, so we can kind of share our climbing passion with each other. I love the feedback. You can drop me a note on Instagram at training4. The number 4 climbing is my training Instagram account. I have my personal Instagram account, which is at Eric_Hörst. And I'm on Facebook, though I don't check that as much as Instagram and some other things. But I always welcome questions, comments. Love to communicate with climbers around the world. And maybe someday our paths will cross, if not here at the Red, somewhere else across the United States or Europe, where I am fortunate to be able to travel every now and then. So I guess we'll wrap it up for today with a final sip of coffee, and we'll close the door and close the cafe for the day. Have a good one. We'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks back here.